Okay, we will begin broadcasting in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this weekly commitment we have made to learn and know from each other. It's 6 p.m. in India, for those of you watching from other time zones and other parts of the world. We have with us today three of us sitting in three metros in the Indian subcontinent. We have Minol Ajekar based in Bangalore. Minol heads corporate communications, business processes, and CSR for the Purvankara Group. It's a large real estate group based in Bangalore with construction work happening in many other parts of India. We have with us Mr. Madan Bahal. Madan is the founder of AdFactors Group and AdFactors Public Relations specifically, which is India's largest public relations firm. He is based in Mumbai in his house and joining us from there. And my name is Amit Prabhu. I'm based in Gurgaon. Among other things, I'm the founding dean at SCORE, the School of Communications and Reputation, and also work with a team of people in Gurgaon to bring out various learning initiatives offline and online throughout the year. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who have just joined in now, we have this live on Zoom and we also are live streaming on YouTube. For those who registered before 12 noon, and we'll have registrations ending every Wednesday at 12 noon for that day's calls, you have the ability to also ask questions through the chat messenger. For those joining on YouTube, you can see it live, you can make comments there, but you won't have the ability to ask questions. This is also recorded, and for those who miss out now or are unable to be on the call entirely, can see the recording later on. Information on all these are available online on our Twitter handle, RepTodayMag and ScoreInd, and on the website of reputationtoday.in as well. Thank you once again. Thank you, Mr. Bahal and Minol. Glad to have you all on this first of its kind Zoom online Reputation Today conclave. So these are, as we've been hearing across the world, unprecedented times. We've never had something like this in our lifetime. You are senior to us. You were born in the post-independence era. So tell us, Mr. Bahal, have you seen something like this ever in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s in India or anywhere in this world where things shut down for several days and work had to halt or move to a different remote way of working? Hello, Mr. Bahal, can you hear us? Minol, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Amit. I can hear you. I think there's something wrong at Mr. Bahal's end.
Bahal is frozen for some reason. Hemant, can you hear us in the back end?
Yeah. Amit, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. I think we lost you for a few seconds.
Amit?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello. Hello.
I can hear you.
There is a connectivity issue. I don't think
No issues. We'll get back. It happens sometimes. This is the new normal for the future.
What fun in a video call if all the videos work on time. Amit, how have you been coping working from home, considering you're someone who takes some 20 flights a week?
That's an exaggeration. I have taken 20 flights in a week ever in my life. I've done about 10 or 12 in a month maximum, sometime in the past. It's maximum 8 flights usually. I'm coping well. I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of time to do a little bit of other things as well, which I couldn't do earlier in some form, reading and writing especially. Hemant, if you can hear us, let us know. For those listening into this Zoom call and the YouTube live stream, please bear with us for a few moments.
Amit, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear us?
The video is kind of frozen.
We can hear you. If you can hear us, we can go ahead and talk. The video can come back. No worries.
Okay, I can hear you.
This is Murphy's Law. Despite a dry run, despite getting on early, these things can happen. So it's okay. Sujit Patil is telling us that he can hear Minol and me, which is great.
Hi, Sujit. Nice to know.
There are 265 people who signed up for this Zoom call and a few others who will join us on live stream on YouTube.
Yeah, it's not a daily occurrence that Mr. Bahal, has a whole hour to spend like that and maybe taking questions. So I'd probably encourage everyone, and especially the younger ones, to think of legitimate stuff to ask and get some advice.
Yeah, so I think people can hear both and I. That's the message I'm getting. But because there's something. So, Minol, while we wait for Mr. Bahal, let's talk. Let's check with you on two things. One is, as a construction real estate group, the Purvankara group, how did you manage to quickly wrap up things when the lockdown was announced? And because you deal with a lot of migrant workers, construction labor force and others, how did you all do what you have to do in the limited time you had? Can you share with us a couple of things on those in the meanwhile?
Muted. Okay. Sorry for the delay there. I was just waiting for the host to unmute me. Firstly, for a construction firm, this whole work from home thing is brand new. Okay, no one had ever heard of it. But then since you specifically asked me about the migrant workers, I think one thing that helped is probably that there were a few of us who were tracking things that were happening in other countries also. So we were looking at a timeline of week 1, week 2. So we were preparing. And one thing we were very absolutely clear on is that we were not going to tell any of our workforce to leave or go back to their hometowns, and that we were going to look after them. So I think we started preparing around the 12th or 13th of March. I think that was a great decision at that point. And maybe it was me saying that, I think it may happen. I have a lot of cousins who are doctors. So they kept saying, India is going towards week 2. So we started planning around the 12th or 13th. I think that really helped us.
I think the link is restored now.
Can you hear us, Mr. Bahal?
Yes, I can now. I can.
So we were talking to Minol in the meanwhile. I'll come back to my first question we began with. We wanted to understand from you, in your years of growing up, in your early days in your career and the last 25, 30 years, have you seen anything like this anywhere in the world or in India that has disrupted business in such a huge way that we are seeing now in the last few days?
Again, I can't hear you on the video. This phone is. One was talking.
Minol?
Yes.
Can you? I'm getting.
I think when you come on the line, it starts working.
Okay. Go on. Answer the question, Mr. Bahal.
Maybe he can't hear us now.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amit, you go with the question again.
My question to you is, Mr. Bahal, have you ever seen anything like this in the last 40, 50 years of the world of work, world of business that we are seeing today? And what is your immediate thought to what happened in the last few days when this entire lockdown was announced? What were your initial first thoughts to what was happening?
This is absolutely unprecedented, Amit. The world, mankind has never witnessed anything of this kind before, where there is no country left untouched, no human being safe, from the Prince Charles to the Prime Minister to the Health Minister of Britain, people who should be the safest have been infected. No economy is safe, no business is safe, no individual is safe. And that kind of vulnerability mankind has never witnessed before. So we have seen many adversities before. I mean, as a business, we have gone through the 2008-9 economic meltdown. Before that, we have seen the internet bust, bubble burst. Before that, we saw the Harshad Mehta scam, but nothing of this scale or this size. When this happened in 2008-9, it was the banking system impacted largely. The rest of the world was safe. It wasn't a health crisis parallelly. When it happened, of course, and we were particularly impacted because we had a lot of exposure to two categories: financial services.
Mr. Bair, we can't hear you. Can you come closer to your microphone, please? We can't hear you clearly.
No, I think it's I'm not clear, but I think there's a connectivity
Now
issue.
it's better. When you come closer, it's better. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Yes.
So the point is that we did go through this kind, not this kind of a crisis, a much lighter version of this crisis in 2008-9, when the economic meltdown happened. We were particularly impacted because we had a large exposure to financial services and capital markets, and those were very badly impacted. But it wasn't this kind of an existential threat where just about everybody is feeling insecure, health infrastructure is breaking down. There's an economic crisis of an unprecedented scale, and the whole world seems to be in lockdown. I haven't witnessed this kind of things before. We did navigate 2008-9 very comfortably. I remember having called a open house, and in that open house we announced, all 300 people at that time, that I would be able to assure you that none of you will lose your job. I would be able to assure you that there will be no salary cuts either. And I went on to further say that do not leave your job at this time, because you might leave in the hope of getting 10% more somewhere. But what happens to that business by the time you join, we won't know. We called all hands on the deck. It was a storm. We called everybody to action, and the whole agency kind of worked together with tremendous vigor and rigor, you could say. And even in that year, though we lost 40% of our business initially, and this was the quarter of April, May, June, again we recovered, and we kind of had a growth even that year of 8%, but nothing of this kind before.
Interesting. So coming back to the last few days and the next few weeks, and our topic today is facing the future with empathy and resolve. What do you think should companies do instantly, immediately in the next few days to show their employees, show their staff, for clients to show their agencies and consultancies, and vice versa, a fair amount of empathy and resolve? So what are the 2 or 3 things you would advise your clients, advise your teams to do in order to be empathetic and to have a way of dealing with this in a more strong and able manner?
Amit, the world is facing 2 very visible crises, and the third, which is not so visible and not so much being discussed. The first is, of course, health. The second is, you could say, economic. The third is the leadership crisis. You see the kind of confusion the American administration comes and demonstrates on television every day. You see the kind of confusion the British government or the Spanish government or the Italian government. It's almost that leadership has lost its mind. They're saying something today, something tomorrow. I think it's time for all constituents of society, whether it is business, whether it is financial institutions, whether it is non-government, or one of the most important constituents of society and powerful constituents is business, which is a corporation. I think it is time for all of us, businesses and consultants, to demonstrate leadership. We have to stand tall. We have to lead by example. We have to in every decision that we take, in every action that we initiate, there has to be a kind of filter of empathy and compassion, regardless of the economic cost, that we got to demonstrate. What is uppermost on people's mind, employees' mind particularly, it is, will I have my job? will my salary be cut? These are two very, very important, significant things. There may be smaller things, but these are uppermost. I think businesses, whether on the client side, whether on the agency side, I'm sure are trying to do their best to create a sense of security and safety in achieving this. The second thing is work from home is easier said than done. If you are not equipped, if you are equipped, it's an easy transition. But if you are not equipped with the technology and the tools and the training, both professional, let's say the process, the protocol, the training, and an emotional makeup to navigate this kind of a time, then it just might be difficult. So you have to empower people to work from home so that they are able to navigate this thing easily. The fourth thing is a fair amount of fear and anxiety just grips everybody in these circumstances. And with a 24 by 7 barrage of negative news, whether on television, whether on online media, whether on Twitter, just keeps adding to the anxiety. And what can leadership, whether on the business side or the consulting side, do to allay the fears and anxieties of people? Do to say, no, this is also temporary, this will go, and keep that hope and optimism alive, I think is important. On the other side, just one more moment I'll need. Am I audible? Okay,
Yes, you are.
One more point that I want to make is for the agency and its people, that the client is having a bigger crisis than you are having. The client has bigger stakes. Somebody like Tata serve 100,000 million people, 1 billion people. Somebody like Godrej serves 600 million people. So for them to manage their supply chains and their cash flows and their production and everything, that problem is far bigger. So you have to empathize with their client. And the least that you can do is keep the service going, keep the protocol going. Do not worry about the client said this or client is demanding more or expecting more. This is our time to stand up, stand tall, and say, we will deliver, we are on your side. So I would say hyper connected, hyperactive, hyper proactive. That is my message to the agency side, and that's my message to the business at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Bell, just, I mean, a couple of things that, this word unprecedented is being used a lot with this scenario, because it is true. This is not something that has been experienced before. And you did touch upon a few points in terms of how do you protect your employees? So with the whole empathy piece, you said, there was assuring them of job security and assuring them that, as leaders, practice what you preach. That's a great point. What would you say that how can the employees then also transfer this protection to their clients? What advice would you give them there?
So first of all, connecting. Are you in touch with the client situation?
Are you listening to things that have been said about the client, let's say in the social media or digital space? Are you contextualizing what it is? Are you trying to understand what are the challenges your client is facing and what solutions they might be requiring?
Again, we have a problem. Mr. Bahal, we can't hear you. Your phone is on and your laptop. Can you put off the phone or the laptop? I think there's an issue with the phone. It's echoing.
Okay, I'll put the phone off. Is it better?
This is better.
Yeah, go on.
I put off the phone. So I think the agency professional has to realize that you are a critical, essential service. You are almost like an intensive care unit in communications. So instead of intensive care in hospital, it is intensive communication in a business sense. And when the client is struggling to keep his business afloat, you have to keep the communication lines intact. Two ways: both you're listening and bringing input to the client, and two, what the client has to say, you should take that message back. And if you say that the print media is not working or that is not working, you've got to find innovative solutions so that the message or the communication lines are not broken. Because when that gets broken, more anxiety and more trauma sets in.
So, I mean, if we have to take an extension of this, what sort of advice would you be giving chief communication officers like myself or CMOs during this time in terms of, while we have the consultancy backing us, what is it that we in-house can do to ensure that there is seamless business?
So I think it is, see, one thing is about communications. The other thing is about behavior. I would like to go back to behavior because good reputation or public relations comes from, or perception comes from 90% behavior and 10% communications. So while the communication lines have to be kept intact 24/7, I think CCOs, chief communication officers and chief marketing officers have a particular role to play in this. The risk paradigm, the reputation risk paradigm that we're discussing is completely different what it was till 15 days ago. A whole new range of business risks have come up, and every business risk represents a reputation risk. In fact, as they say, the reputation risk is the mother of all other risks.
True.
Under these circumstances, what can the CCOs, CMOs, if to my friends, I'll say, first of all, realize that you are under intense scrutiny. One wrong tweet from your CCO, one wrong tweet from your CMO, one wrong social media post even from an ordinary employee who may be working in your company. That's something
Absolutely.
happened to Infosys only a few days ago. One young person went and put something which was insensitive, and the corporate brand, faces the flag. So sensitizing this social media behavior, uh, any hint of opportunism in corporate behavior, any hint of like getting the right price, or any hint of, you might say, I'm bulldozing or bullying somebody into paying up on time. I think the reputation risks of this kind will be very difficult. So you have to be very sensitive. Any action, whether on the marketing front or HR front or finance front or any other critical areas of business, you have to be very cautious in what you're doing. You have to be very cautious in how you're doing. The last thing is, the biggest challenge for a CMO or a CCO currently is to understand the challenges that the stakeholders are facing. The
True.
employee is facing his own set of challenges. The customer is facing his own set of challenges. The community where the plant is operating is facing its own set of challenges. Everybody is facing challenges. So for you to understand the challenges first and take them to your senior leadership in the boardroom, that these are the challenges our stakeholders facing, because the boardrooms are not connected to the last mile. You are the vital bridge, and if you can just keep them appraised, this constituency seems most in pain. This constituency is the most vulnerable, and here we must prioritize, or here we must direct our resources or actions. I think that listening, that contextualizing and giving inputs to the senior leadership is an important part. Guiding all corporate actions through the prism of, you might use the word empathy. One might say that, well, we are in such economic difficulty, what empathy can we show? You have to show it, because you are a powerful constituent of society. You are much better than the employee or the Mathadi Kamgar or the land
True.
the guy who's working day to day, or the people in the gig economy. That largeness of heart, that largeness of action, we will have to do our best to show. That's the point I would like to make.
So, because you mentioned largeness of heart, you mentioned empathy, sensitivity. So, of course, there is a lot of organizations that have been, putting their money out there and putting their cash out there, which is, of course, the need of the hour. But is there anything specific action-wise that you can tell us any of your clients have been doing or displaying, in this time where sensitivity and empathy is needed?
I think there will be hundreds of inspiring examples, almost hundreds of inspiring examples. I do not know of any significant or any kind of factors that is not doing something. Well, money is the easiest thing. I mean, you said besides money, but a Tata group making a 1,500 crore donation is not a mean thing.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Absolutely.
1,000 crores coming from Tata Sons, 500 coming from Tata Trust. Together, it adds up a lot. Each of their group companies are doing quite a lot. The hospitals are doing their bit. The motors may be doing its bit. PCS is doing its bit. So the trusts are doing enormous number of projects. So it's difficult to enumerate them. But take the Mahindra Group, for example. It's told the government that the critical single equipment required to fight the COVID-19 is a ventilator. Because when the patient gets serious in an ICU, ventilator is the last line of defense to save a life. They have stepped in and said, we'll make ventilators, we'll make gloves. You take Godrej. What has Godrej done? Multiple things. Instead, I'm providing beds to hospitals which are being set up on an emergency basis. Godrej is saying, well, there are thousands of construction workers, like you said in the beginning, who are stranded on our sites. They have prevented them from going to their hometown in Andhra Pradesh or Bihar or Eastern UP or wherever. They're taking care of their food. They're taking care of their health care. They've created a creche. They are created improved production of sanitizers. If you take TVS has converted its equipment into town sanitization kind of situations. Apollo is providing services free, only charging for medicines. They are tied up with OYO. They are tied up with State Bank to create relief packages that will help everybody. You take a Vodafone. It has, of course, a very powerful foundation which does many things. But the fact that Vodafone, despite its business challenges that competition has kind of helped with, despite the business challenges, it is keeping the country connected. That you and me can get on a call with Vodafone. I think that itself. So there are three levels at which they're working. They're giving financial assistance. They're doing other things that are useful to make the world a better place in the COVID. And then they're keeping their business, which is a critical supply chain for many services and products to the industry. And I think all three are marvelous things. And I think clients not only of Fat Factors, and I mean clients of everybody are doing things, and we must applaud them for their contributions and for their work.
Absolutely. Great that corporations are viewed with hearts.
Questions. We know there are two audience questions. I just want to jump in with those first and then come back. So two questions, Mr. Bahal. One question comes from Asim Sood. He says, during the housing bubble crisis in 2008, 2009 and the recession, PR firms, especially in India, saw the biggest growth and margins. Clients moved money away from paid channels into public relations. Do you expect the same to happen in this current crisis? And how can PR firms take the lead?
I think it's a good question. And though the initial shock will be there because a panic sets in the boardroom. What the board says, it tells the CEO cut cost. The CEO tells all the line managers cut cost. And the line managers go to everybody, including a PR agency, that either I don't want your service for the moment, or sorry, I'm going to ask you for a 20% or a 10% or a 5% reduction. This is an instant panic reaction because nobody thinks through deeply in this time, and PR will be painted with the same brush with advertising, with many other things that may be required or not required. But when saner counsel, when more thinking sets in, and you realize that as a business you are vulnerable every minute to the new reputation risks that are coming, I think that's when the world will, or the businesses will take notice. That's when the CCO will be able to, or the communication head of the company will be able to go and tell the company that, look, I want my service line intact. I want my service to be robust. And I need my PR agency on my side because they are doing a good and they are a critical let's say service in what we got to in our ability to engage and communicate with our audiences. I think when that happens 15 days, 1 month later, I think we should be in a better place and we should actually see more services required by the clients than less. I think a certain segment might get impacted, and that's the segment of where you're doing, let's say, new launches, new fashion shows, new kind of lifestyle products, something to do with hospitality or something to do with travel, or totally consumer kind of high-end products. Those agencies that are doing only those kind of things may see a little bit of impact. The other area where some impact might definitely come is the startups which are very, let's say, meagerly funded. They go in a hibernation mode. They want to save every rupee that they can because it is critical for their survival. So barring this couple of sectors, I think PR should come out relatively much better off. Remember, and I think communication officers, CCOs realize this, that public relations, particularly crisis, at this time you require crisis, at this time you require internal communications, at this time you require more advocacy with the government to give you some reliefs of this kind or the other. At this time you need more social listening, more media monitoring, more responsiveness to a story that is going, which could be a threat to you or an opportunity, less opportunity, but more threat. I think when you take all this into account, PR should come better off, and I think CCOs will be empowered to have a word with their management to protect themselves and their agency partners.
Thanks for that. Before I give it back to Minol, one more audience question. This is coming from many people at 2 levels. Question is, what should smaller firms do in this case? Because for bigger firms, there's some amount of insulation, some amount of cushioning. Smaller firms with fewer clients, with smaller retainers who are going to have them stop work. What are those smaller firms going to do? And what should youngsters look forward to in the future? Younger people in their 20s, 30s, some have started their careers now. So 2 questions linked. Smaller firms, what should they do in this time? And what should youngsters look forward to or look up to in the future, in the near future?
I think it is a fair question, and the smaller firm is reasonably let's say worried about what is going to happen. I would say get into a survival mode. You can do everything if you survive this. And for survival, the most important thing is planning cash. The biggest crisis in the next month or 2 will be cash crisis, because when the supply chains get disrupted, when demand gets disrupted, supply gets disrupted, when retail is shut down, offtake is shut down, the Rabi crop is not coming, the crop is standing in the fields all over India, but there are no workers to cut it. The ships are standing outside. There's no one to download it, offload the material. Cash is going to be an important, and you are one element of the cash value chain. So how do you conserve or preserve your cash for the next 1 month or 2 months, 3 months, maybe I would say even 4 months? What are the things you can hold back? Talk to the people. If you can hold back the rent for your landlord, try and hold it back. Salaries you cannot hold back. At least entire salaries you cannot hold back. So just go into that kind of planning mode is one answer. The second thing is, remember, the way you will survive is how useful you are to your client at this point. You should never look like a client. Even as a small agency, you should look like a critical necessity to your client. You should look like an essential ICU kind of a service. That should be the proactivity of thinking, ideation, service you should maintain. That should be the kind of mindset and empathy you should have for the client. So don't go in, I'm reminded of the story of the deer who got frozen on a highway when the truck was approaching with its headlights on. It got frozen, it stood still and got run over. Don't get frozen in fear. It is time to act. It is time to lead. Even if a small agency, you are playing an important role in society today. You are keeping the communication lines open between your client and its stakeholder and society. So play that role effectively. Call all hands on action. Be hyper connected to your employees day in and day out. Be hyper connected to your clients day in and day out, and express a resolve that you are going to fight. And
Did we lose Mr. Bahal there?
Yeah, looks like we lost him. Till we get him back, I'm going to ask you a question, Minol. What are the two things you would think a young professional should pick up as competencies in the next few weeks, months that they have, that you feel as a client is sometimes lacking with the young professionals? This is the time that they have in some measure to do and learn new things. What should they learn? If there are 2 things you would advise a young person to learn, what would they be?
See, I think for me to be one tangible, one intangible. I think the tangible thing, and that's a no-brainer, is really up your digital skills.
I think it was interrupted.
Yeah, we can hear you, but I asked Minol a question in the meanwhile. So once she finishes, I'll come back to you, Mr. Bahal.
So I'll wrap up quickly. I think the no-brainer is up your digital skills, understand every aspect of it. And I think the intangible is related to what we are talking about today, empathy and sensitivity. These 2 elements have to be a part in every form of, every aspect of communication, whether it's written or spoken or non-verbal. I think these 2 things will do young professional well in the next few months.
Thanks, Minol. Mr. Bahal, can you hear us now? No, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? So we keep losing Mr. Bahal a couple of times.
Amit, what same question to you, what you asked me. What do you think young professionals should amp up on?
I have a feeling, I may be wrong, that a lot of younger professionals, people born in the 90s and after, don't like to read. That's my feeling. I may be wrong, I get beaten for that. I think now is the time to start reading. I think challenge yourself, say one book a week, pick up 4 books, pick up one book. And I'm sure all of you have 4 or 5 books at home. Flipkart and Amazon won't deliver now. So pick up a book each every week and read one book, one that is linked to the communications and marketing business we are part of, one book on fiction, one self-help book, and one book of your choice. So I would say use the whole month of April to read a book each week and say, wow, I used this lockdown to read 4 books I would never have read otherwise. That's my quick advice to start with. Is Mr. Bahal back?
I don't see him on there. Maybe are there any audience questions that are directed towards you, Amit?
No, nobody asks me questions because I'm sarcastic
No?
and don't like my answers. But anyway, I get a feeling he's back. I can see his name on the screen, but I don't hear his voice yet. Anyway, till he comes back, tell us 2 things that you are doing at Purvankara as the Chief Corporate Communications, Business Processes and CSR Officer there. Tell us 2 things or 1 thing that you're doing in these times to keep employees motivated wherever they are.
Okay, one thing that while, like I said, work from home is brand new for a real estate company. So we're trying to maximize engagement. So whether we're getting them to send photos of their work desks, we're reaching out to them and asking them what they had for lunch every day, especially people who are cooking themselves, so we're running like a weekly aaj ghar mein kya bana hai, you get a gold star if you've done well. So because me personally also, there's a lot of housework that also needs to be done if you're sitting at home, and of course a lot and you have office work also. So our communication has been very empathetic, and it's been about tips of how to balance the two and to appreciate the fact that you're at home with your family, spend time with them.
Audio is on. Audio is on.
Go on. No, he's talking to, I think, him.
Okay, and of course, that's the comms perspective of it. We're still giving them, like we said, 1 week. And from the business process perspective, of course, revamping our business continuity manual and our risk management manual, because like unprecedented times, and we really want to document every piece of work that is going in to ensure that we have knowledge transfer for later.
Right.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, excellent.
If you finish what you were saying, Minor will ask you the next question. If you haven't finished what you were saying, you can continue. This is the future of panel discussions. I mean, imagine on panel discussion, somebody just says, hey, I want to go out and take a call. You didn't do that, I know. But I'm saying this is going to be the fun way of doing things in the future, where you just lose connectivity because of somewhere internet dipping in some form or the other. But go on, Mr. Vale, and complete what you were saying. And then I'll ask Minor to ask you her question.
So the issue that we were discussing was the smaller agency. I think, you cannot control the situation outside in the world, but you can control your own actions. You can control your own attitude, your behavior. Don't get bogged down. Just fight it back with all the resolve and all the might that you have. Remember, you are a critical service. Remember, you are an essential service to create value in society, and that's going to stand by you. But don't lose nerve in these times. And even now, there will be more business starting coming your way very soon. Keep searching for it. When one door closes, another opens somewhere. Just because it is darkness, we don't know which door has opened, but keep your eyes open. And I think we should be all able to sail through.
Mr. Pal, just following up from that. So, of course, we were talking about the issue or the problems that smaller agencies must be facing. And you said that prudent cash flow management is very essential for this point of time. So you allocate your resources where it is important. And you also spoke about that becoming an ICU for your stakeholders. So making yourself more important. But there's still going to be some businesses that maybe are not able to do so and still suffer heavy losses. And you being a veteran, and like you said, you went through the 2008 recession. Any on the ground tips that people can use to rebuild their business if they are not able to manage these difficult times?
See, rebuilding is a second stage. Surviving the storm is the first thing. When you survive the storm and the storm gets over, that's when you see, okay, what is lost, what is gained. This is an unprecedented opportunity for learning. So just going through this and coming out alive, I think, is a big thing. When you come out of this, you know these are the things you learned. You learned, let's say you've got fast forwarded into a digital age. The post-COVID world is not going to be the same that it was when we went into it. Everything is going to change. Um, our service delivery models will change. Our value propositions will change. The way we charge our clients might change. The what services they expect might change. And therefore, use this time and this, you might say, stress test for business. Like you have a cardiac stress test. This is a stress test for business. Come out, be very, very determined and resolved to come out of it, like all of us should be. And while the small business has its own problem, remember that David has smaller problems than the Goliath. You have more agility, you have more speed. As small businesses, you don't have to take a decision waiting from New York to come or London to come to tell whether to spend 200 rupees or no. So you have that agility. So, and as entrepreneurs, what is the single biggest thing that differentiates an entrepreneur from the rest of the world? It is audacity.
True.
Correct. If you are an audacious person who got into business in the first place, then demonstrate your audacity and your mettle, because right now it is needed the most. So be creative, be innovative, conserve your resources, survive, and there will be a better tomorrow for which we should learn and get prepared for. That's all I would say.
Some great advice there from Mr. Bahal. I think you're saying, I really like this, display your audaciousness. I think I'm going to remember those words. Amit, you're muted right now, or we can't hear you? Or...
Yeah, I mute because sometimes there's an echo happening and I don't keep it muted. You are talking. My question to Mr. Bahal is an important question that has come time and again. How are younger people, older people going to deal with their mental health when they come out of this and during this period? So you can tell us if your company or your clients' companies are doing something. If not, what are the 2 or 3 things that one needs to do to keep their mental health strong and in good balance through these 3 weeks of being at home and post that dealing with all the economic mess we have to face together? So the mental health question.
See, there is a lot of conversation around this all over. And this conversation has been happening in the PR industry even before COVID-19 conversation started. We are hearing about it on television all the time, particularly in the Western society. I have a very different view on this. I think your mental state is in your hands. Your mental health should be in your own hands. You are the person who decides what state you should be in. You have to be strong. You have to be resilient. You have to say that, no, I'm not fragile like a piece of glass that I'm going to break down. You have gone through 18, 20 years or 16 years of education. You have seen the whole world. And therefore, if you cannot take charge of yourself and protect your own emotional, mental health, what the hell are you going to do for the rest of the world? You will be completely helpless. So I want every individual to be cognizant of this, that there is no help coming. I mean, there is one psychiatrist for 1 million people in India. From where will you get that help? So take charge of yourself. Take charge of your mental state. Practical tips, I'll give you what I do. First of all, I'm super busy. They say work is therapy, so be super busy. I start my work fully dressed. I have my yoga. I walk 10,000 steps a day. So I'm ready at my workplace at 8 o'clock in the morning and I work till 10 o'clock in the night like I always do. So I don't have the time to be mentally worried or stressed or in a state of anxiety. I never have been stressed. The second thing is, well, if you still have time, this is the best time to learn. Udemy or 100 other online service providers are providing you courses for 1,000 or 1,500 or 600 bucks. Go and see what courses you want to do. If you still have time, read something. If you still have time, follow a fashion or a hobby. If you still have time, help your mother or spouse in the kitchen or clean all the doors and windows and the floor twice a day. And if you still have time, well, do something more that can create some value instead of being in this state of self-pity. Arey, main mar gaya, now what can I do? I'm stressed. And the last advice is stop watching television 24/7 and stop seeing I stopped reading newspapers 18 years ago. It's not an exaggeration. I have not read newspapers for 18 years. I still managed to go on to build the country's largest PR firm.
Hold on to that thought, Mr. Bahal. Hold on to that thought. The question's coming again and again because you said newspaper is, how are we going to pitch stories to businesses, for our businesses now to media? That's a question coming from a couple of people. I won't say their name because 3 have asked that question. So do you have advice for people who are saying, how do I pitch to journalists in these times?
I think our experience, we are not into a business as usual mode. As a firm, Adfactors PR is in a business as usual plus mode. We would otherwise not talk to our client sometimes in 7 days. Now we are talking twice a day. We otherwise not talk to media maybe once in a month. We are now calling everybody all the time. We are following what stories they're doing. We are giving them follow-up stories on that. We are storing what we are seeing patterns of what stories this person does over a period of 6 months, 1 year. We are giving them stories. We are listening to chatter that's happening for that sector or for that company or for the country at large. And therefore pitching stories that are relevant, that are not necessarily the brand being positioned. But if you contextualize the brand into a larger event or a macro context, as you might say, and then relate your brand to that story or that company to that story, I think there is a wide appetite for stories. Well, the print editions may not be coming, but online has a voracious appetite for accommodating every story that you can. And journalists, after being in a state of shock for 2-3 days, have again become very active. And if you take relevant stories to them, they're listening to your stories and they're actually carrying them as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Minol, do you have anything else to ask before I pick up 2 more audience questions?
I quickly just wanted to ask if there's been Mr. Bal, you mentioned about this one person from Infosys who said something insensitive and that took a wrong turn. Has there been anything else that could have been handled better generally in this atmosphere that we are in?
No, I think the point, it's not about Infosys, but just in the context, there are multiple examples of this where a CEO, let's say, goes and says on Twitter that he is very upset that his newspaper is not coming, and the Twitter just gets back to him. Another person goes and complains, well, look, my factory workers are not able to come to the office, and I'm stressed. What do I do? Showing lack of sensitivity to the problem of the factory worker, and again you get a backlash. Somebody else might be showing off his new car that he bought yesterday. You understand? So every action that you take, every piece of communication, whether in the mass media, whether in the social media, whether even an email that you are sending out today, because you will be required necessarily to do some difficult communications as well, because that is the order of the day. But the words that you choose, the nuances that you choose, the care and empathy that you demonstrate in that communication. And I think CCOs have a particular responsibility to kind of become gatekeepers to whatever is going out and actually call meetings in their organization of CMOs that while our business risks will manifest later, anything insensitive that the company or its people say, particularly CXOs, will get trolled immediately.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the examples.
So, Amit, the constant message from Mr. Bahal is sensitivity and empathy. And so I think it was great that you guys decide to have a discussion around this piece, because that's going to be the single emotion that most communication is going to be centered around.
Right. Mr. Bahal, another question which is a little offbeat, and we decided we may talk about that since we have time. The government is doing their best. The government has never seen something like this. They had a lockdown in various states, then a national lockdown by the Prime Minister was announced. Do you think the government can do something differently in its communications approach and communications plan nationally and at local levels as well? If yes, what can they do? If not, what do you think are they doing right?
It's a very difficult situation, and sitting here in my house, I can say the government could have done this better, or government can do that better. I think if I see the kind of confusion governments everywhere are demonstrating, I think the government of India has done much better. At least it doesn't seem to be confused. When they come and say they're speaking something very specific, when they're coming and talking, they announced a lockdown well in town. They did a drill of that for Janta curfew 4 days before. They knew they were going to announce the lockdown after 4 days, but that's how they prepared the country for that idea. The fact that they brought the economic relief package for the bottom half of India through a gas supply chain, or through 500 rupees for an old man, or 1,000 rupees for somebody, and 2,000 somebody, and give them 10 kilos of rice and 2 kilos of dal. I think it is the wise thing to do. Uh, while they've also done enough things for business in terms of relaxations and some pumping in of money, and telling the banks not to be very coercive in collecting money. I think on the whole, the government has conducted itself well, and could they have done better? Of course, they can do better. India is a large and complex. In the last 48 hours, the channels are blaring all over about some situation in Delhi, when a lot of people of one religion congregated, and they've carried it back all over. Can the government help it? Perhaps it can, perhaps it can't. It's too large a country and too complex a country, too much socio-cultural diversity, too much socio-political, socio-economic diversity. So I think under the things, they're taking a very measured stance. I would like to hear from the government one thing though, and the thing that as an individual that concerns me is, nobody talks about what is the state of our preparedness for an endemic of this size. While there are a lot of models being discussed on every international channel, that I predict this is the end game. I predict this may happen, or we might need so many BiPAP machines, or so many what they call the ventilators, or so many hospital beds, or so many ICUs. I wish the government was a little more forthcoming in telling the country, because that will also address anxiety to the extent that it can, that we are prepared in very many ways. I'm sure a lot of work is happening in the background. They're not sharing it. They'll share it perhaps at the right time. I mean, India is known for its jugaad solutions. Uh, they will find a jugadi solution to solve the problem. I'm sure they will come out. In terms of communications, I think we should not over communicate unnecessarily. We should not under communicate unnecessarily. So I think just about the right things are happening. On the medical infrastructure part, I wish they were a little more transparent and a little more clear.
We have 10 more minutes and about 3 or 4 questions more. Do you have anything to ask as your final question before we come back for your final comments?
So I think the one last question that I have is probably just as on the client side. In the first 2 weeks post, we all come out of lockdown, what should be our priority? What should be our priority for the first 15 days of business?
It's a difficult one, Minal, because nobody is able to predict where it is going. I think the Indian media, maybe rightly so, is not extrapolating where these things are going. Some come and express an optimistic view, but the rate at which infections can happen, and if you just simulate what is happening in other countries, could that be even more worse in India? Maybe it would be, given our socio-economic conditions, given the hygiene issues, given the general lower immunity in undernourished segments of the society, given the clusters that we live in places like Dharavi and the Koliwada that we're talking about. A Dharavi exists in every city and every part of the country. a small or a big. The 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 real impact is not come yet. I think it is the beginning. Uh, Coronavirus has just begun. It is not ended, and I don't think it is ending anytime soon. This unless the virus mutate itself in a benign way, which is wishful thinking, like is wishful to say in a hot temperature the virus will not come, or it is to say that, well, Indian immunity is stronger, then won't happen. I think we should be more scientific in our temperament. We should say yes, the scale of the problem in India could well be the largest in the world. And if that happens, we don't know if it's 15 days, it is 1 month, it is 2 months, it is 3 months. 1 month ago, when the first advisory we sent out 1 month ago in ad factors, we said stock up on rations for 3 months.
Oh,
This was long before all these things happened. Stock up on cash, stock up on medicine, stock up on this. That's when we started buying 450 laptops for everybody to have a laptop, to get all the connectivity tools. And just in time, as divine providence would have, or serendipity would have, we got prepared with so many things that we are today relatively better equipped to serve our stakeholders, whether our employees or our clients. But I just want to challenge the premise itself that it is we should plan for a long haul. We
okay.
should plan for, simulate for a difficult situation, because this is just the first level of business continuity being addressed. Most organizations do not have a business continuity plan beyond the obvious that they have known for 50 years, which is life as usual. What's the worst that will happen? Market will go up or down.
Mm.
Electricity will go down for 8 hours and I'll have a computer system backup. Or there will be a flood, or there'll be an earthquake, or there'll be. So these are all the things we have planned for. So the risk management rule book is completely out of the window.
True.
The messaging window, as we say, key messages, is completely thrown out of the window. We are dealing with a completely new risk paradigm, and it is not over yet. I don't want to create scare. That's not my intention. But I want to say that maybe it has just begun. And we should plan for the worst, but hope for the best. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Worst.
And that is how I would say, when it comes, when it gets over, eventually it will. Nothing lasts forever. Good things don't last forever, and bad things don't last forever. Neither will COVID. That optimism we should have. That faith in ourselves and in a larger Almighty God we should have. When it gets over, we should be prepared. We should have, of course, a post-COVID simulation of things, so to say. What will supposing COVID lasts for 3-4 months? Will the world be the same again? It won't be the same again.
No.
It would be fast forwarded in culture, in behavior, in technology, in many different ways. In the way we do business, in the way people consume information, in the way people socially engage with each other. So what will the model be like? And we should get to that extent prepared. At least when Einstein did E is equal to mc square, he did not demonstrate it physically. So at least those models on paper, at least those models on a simulated computer system should be there. That if this is happening, then we got to be prepared and moving like this fast. This would be the first things that will be put in order. These are the first things that we will do, or launch new services, or how we will migrate. This is how we'll train our workforce. So many things of that kind will be required to be done. But I don't want to put a time. I think we should plan for the long haul. The important message as simple as it is, you have to take responsibility for your own health, physical health and mental health. You cannot go out of your house. At least you are lucky you don't have to. There are the doctors who are forced to go. There are pilots and the army guys and the police guys who are forced to go. There are people in the food supply chain who have to go. You're lucky. So you should be less stressed than those guys are. So protect your physical health, keep walking, be active, do a little exercise, do a little Surya Namaskar if you know it, do a little deep breathing, do a little walking from one end of the house to the other end of the house. Do whatever you can, but keep yourself mentally, physically healthy. Do not go out. When people ask me how am I managing it, because I never stayed home for 40 years. No strike, no band, no flood, no earthquake could hold Madan Bahal back at home. No Diwali, no Dasera, no. I'm in the office 365 days a year. I'm now at home because I realize my responsibility. I know my responsibility to my people, to my organization, to my clients, to my country. As a market leading independent firm, that's the only one left in this country of that scale. I have a responsibility to the business of this country. Our businesses, our clients, the listed clients are 1/3 of the market capitalization of India, or their market capitalization is equal to 1/3 of India's GDP. I cannot go down. I cannot fall sick. And therefore, I have to be home. That sense of responsibility that I have to be home and functional and sane all the time keeps me at home. And therefore, I would request everybody to be on this call in the PR industry to just follow this one dictum. Don't say, oh, my girlfriend is missing me. She stays in the next building. She says, come to the gate. I want to see your face. I'm feeling damn low, yeah. So tell her, no, I'm not coming today. Or tell your boyfriend, I'm not coming today. Don't go for vegetables or smoking breaks or whatever. Just be at home. In that way, you can protect yourself and your future and your family and your old parents if they're home.
Right.
That's all I have to say.
I'm mindful of people's time. It's 7 o'clock, but we lost you twice for 5 minutes. So I'm going to take 5 minutes away back. So we're going to do this call for 5 more minutes and then wind up. I'm going to, in the meanwhile, thank Minol for her time and her questions. Minol, you can remain on the call, but your time for questions is over. I'm going to take the last 2 audience questions that have come in. They've come from YouTube, come on Twitter, come on the Q&A app here on the Zoom network as well. Question is, there's a major cycle of failure going to come up, and it's a sad situation. So a lot of people are going to say, how will I pay rent this month for my shop or for my retail store when I'm not having any sales? But I have to also pay my employees for their salaries and things. It's a vicious, crazy cycle. So how is that? How are you going to advise your clients who don't have a method of paying money to their employees because they haven't earned revenue this month? They will pay in the future, they will defer it, but how are they going to communicate that? What is your advice for them to communicate that there's a crazy situation right now, because it could lead to a lot of depression setting in, I mean, again, mental health, it could lead to a lack of empathy as well. So how do businesses deal with that situation where there is a cycle of monies being stuck for a few weeks, few months as we go along? That's one question that's come, and I'll ask you another one before we wind up.
So I have 2-3 points to make. One, it's a systemic issue. It's a global issue. You are not alone in that condition. The whole world is going to be facing the same problem. Every other PR agency is going to be facing the same problem, and you're not alone. There is a second point I want to make, and it has 2 parts. You asked about how will you communicate with your let's say clients in keeping up this continuity. I have had some conversations. Our clients are very large clients mostly, and they're very mature clients. So they understand that a PR agency is paid like a priest, which means for the puja that we do of taking the client's message to the market, like the priest takes it to the god, we get paid like dakshina. So the amount of money that a PR agency is paid or the PR agency charges is such a minuscule proportion of the client's overall budget or economy in 1,000 crore, 5,000 crore, 10,000 crore revenue cycle. Paying 2-3 lakhs, 4 lakh rupees is not such a big thing. Agencies will demonstrate empathy by saying, okay, I understand your difficulty. If a client says take 10% cut or 15% cut or even 20% cut for the time being, or give me a month's break, I think to the extent that you can manage it, you should deal with it and say, don't be rigid and say, no, I can't do it. Because that will be disastrous, because the client is also under pressure. So the clients understand that the value of PR is far too significant in the business environment or in the macro environment that we are in, that we have to keep our communication lines flowing, that we have to keep them intact. And finally, it is such a small part of our total overall budget or our overall expenditure in the balance sheet that I should keep my agency protected. And I might take a little cut in advertising somewhere, because who is reading ads in newspapers in any case today? And even if you're advertising, who's listening to the ads? But here you have critical messaging that's happening. If you emphasize these two things, that I'm such a chota sa part of your total spend, please protect me. I'm a chota sa part of your overall budget relative to all the discretionary expenditure that you do, which may not be critical and you're rightfully holding it back. I want to continue the service because it is important, because it is critical, and together we'll stand, together we'll fight, and we have to protect each other and have empathy for each other. I think that way most clients will understand. Even if the client has a problem, at least they will try to protect it to the best of their ability, and you in turn should protect your people to the best of your ability. That's all I have to say.
And my last question to you before we wind up is, a lot of people are now going to stay at home for 15 more days with their parents, families, little children, retired people, different environments. And a lot of people don't understand what work from home is. A lot of people have a challenge because the little children at home are saying, hey daddy, hey mommy, why are you working? Spend time with me. Okay, and this is going to be very difficult for many people to manage this situation. So as we talk of facing the future with empathy, how would you advise a youngster to deal with this situation in his home with his parents or her parents or with the children or siblings? How would they deal with that? And what should be the easiest way for everybody? I know you spoke of, in a different context, audacity earlier, innovation, creativity, to remain cool and calm for the next few days. That's the last question. A message of hope, a message of belief that people can, hey, sail through this together with the positive energy across the country in whatever dire straits we are in. What is your message for everyone to stay cool, remain focused for the next 15 days till this first phase of lockdown at least completes?
See, there was a poem in my elementary or in my primary school English book, which said, in a farm it referred to the oldest and the youngest are at work with the strongest. So the PR professional is the strongest and the more youthful out of it. The PR business, in the nature of the business, is a consulting business. The consultant has to be sane, be thoughtful, give advice. The responsibility of realizing that realization, that I have a responsibility to my family, to my siblings, to my parents, to my immediate family first, your client and your organization and a larger set of stakeholders might come again. So I think this sense of responsibility, that in this hour of need, it is not about me. It is about everybody who depends on me. And for their sake, I am not going to crumble. I am not going to become weak. I am not going to let them down. I will stand up, I will stand tall, and I will provide the leadership that is required, whether at home, because your wife looks up to you, your children look up to you. In an agency, your peers look up to you. And
a lot of women, the husband looks up to them as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. So even husbands who are not in PR, but the spouses are in PR, I think the problem will come where the husband and wife are both in PR. They'll have to inspire each other. But otherwise, the wives in PR have to inspire their husbands as well. We will have to behave strong as leaders, and that responsibility we should not forget even for a moment. It is that sense of responsibility that will help us navigate this difficulty.
No, thank you so much. I think this last 55, 60 minutes, a little more than that, have been very, very useful and helpful. We've got messages on Twitter, on WhatsApp, on the chat here, on YouTube, and I'm sure there'll be more calls to you and others later on as feedback. Has been very useful, very helpful. My request to you is that we should do another quarter from now, because I'm sure it'll help a larger chunk of people. And as the leader of the biggest PR firm, I think it'll be encouraging for a lot of people to feel reassured as we go along. That's one. To those who have been viewing this, listening in different forms, YouTube or Zoom, thank you so much. We'll do one like this every Wednesday at 6 p.m. in April. Next Wednesday, we have a motivational speaker, a young lady, again Mumbai-based, called Virali Modi. Virali is a disability rights activist, a model, a speaker at multiple events. You can look her up online and her story. She'll spend 1 hour with conversation we'll have with her on how she stays motivated despite being a person with disability now and even in the past, and what she looks for in the future. And thank you once again, Minol. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. It was great having you with us this last 75
Amit,
minutes.
Amit, I have a small point to make. One small point. Half a
Yes.
second. In all our Indian homes, particularly in the Hindu homes, when we do pujas at the way Diwali or Ganpati or any other occasion, we end the puja with one thing, that we tell God that, look, I'm an ignorant guy. I don't know all the rituals correctly, and if I've done any mistake, any error or omission should please be pardoned. So if I've said anything which was off the thing, or if I upset anybody or it was insensitive, I should please be forgiven. I just spoke from my heart. I did whatever I said, whatever I thought was right.
Yeah, so this, thank you for saying that. This is available as a recording. You can look at it on Saturday or Sunday, since now you can't go to the movie theaters on the weekend. You can see this on YouTube at home on the Saturday or Sunday as well. But thank you everybody for viewing. It was very, very energizing, exciting, enriching 1 hour together. Thank you once again. Have a great evening, and let's get through this 14 more days. Hopefully we don't have a postponement of the lockdown. We don't know. Let's wait and watch how things shape up. And if anybody needs to reach out to any of us in any form, email, WhatsApp, call, feel free to do so, to just have a conversation with somebody when you are completely low and down. Thank you so much. Have a great evening for those in India, and mornings, afternoons, nights for those in other parts of the world. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.